So in my last two build videos, I went over wolf-focused companion druid builds that are actually pretty strong for the endgame in Season 7, and in this video, we're going to go over the ultimate version of that build, where I have pretty much all of the pieces I would want to make this style of build as strong as possible. And since my last version of this build, I've added one more mythic item, so we're currently using 2 uniques and 2 mythic uniques. For your helm, you're using Air of Perdition. The primary reason we're using this is because you just get a 60% multiplicative damage increase at all times just from the special of this. The lucky hit chance and the move speed are nice. The critical strike chance is okay, but not that great. And the core skills is kind of useless for this build, but that 60% multiplicative damage is massive and you can't really get damage increases like that on any other helm. If you have Shaco, you can also use that as an alternative. I don't think it's going to give as much damage, but it will also give you some more defensive increases. Then the biggest upgrade you can get for this build is the chest piece, Shroud of False Death. Now, the main reason you take this is it gives +1 to all passives, and that's absurdly strong. A lot of the passives are multiplicative damage increases. You get massive damage reduction. You get pretty much everything you could possibly want in terms of power increases you get from adding +1 to every passive. This is easily the biggest power increase you can get, but the all stat roll on this is also incredibly strong. The main thing this does, besides just giving you some additional stats, is this is enough all stats to get the secondary effect of pretty much every rare node throughout your Paragon boards, which again will just add a massive amount of increased power. And you really don't even care about the special of this chest piece. It gives some additional movement speed when you get that stealth, but that's pretty much all it's used for. And then for one of the most important uniques for this build that allows all of this to happen are the Storm Companion legs, which your wolf companions are now infused with the power of the storm, dealing lightning damage and gaining the storm howl ability. So this adds multiple tags to your wolves, meaning their nature damage, which will apply a bunch of additional effects, their storm, which you can scale up even more, and then your active ability for your wolves, where they would usually just jump to one target and deal damage to that one target, is now an AoE. So a big part of this build is pulling everything together, using your wolf ability on them, and it AoEs everything. So you can kind of stack up the damages you're dealing because everything's grouped up, everything's getting hit by every wolf's ability. And then the stats in this thing are also crazy. Wolf's attack speed, a massive increase to the pack leader's Spirit Boom lucky hit chance, which is how you reset your wolf ability, damage reduction from close enemies, which is nice, and a massive increase to wolf. So these are very important, and try to get a good roll on these if you can. Then for a final unique, we have Eridi's Inexorable Will. The main reason we're using this is when casting an ultimate skill, and again 5 seconds after, pull all distant enemies to you, dealing some damage. That damage is massively increased by your willpower. So currently I have a 30,000% damage increase on this pull. The pull can actually deal decent damage, and we'll be increasing our willpower with some of our other effects while in combat. But a really big reason we're using this is it keeps pulling everything in, so we can get all of that AoE stacked on top of each other. And then next up, we have our skill tree. Now, there's going to be a bit of changes compared to my last version of the build. We still have to put 2 points into the passive skills, but it doesn't matter which because we're not using a passive skill anymore. Then we're going down 1 point into Shred. This is primarily going to be for something to use our spirit to get more lucky hit chance and to give us some movement. And then we're taking Upgrade 1, which gives increased attack speed and heals you when you hit enemies. And then Primal Shred, which makes every attack of Shred, so all 3 of the attacks, be a dash. So now it's just better for movement. Then we're going down, and one of the big changes is we're now going into Earthen Bulwark, which is just a big shield on you, that heals you off of, which is just a big shield on you that shields you depending on your max life. So it is a really big shield even with 1 point. Upgrade 1 gives you Unstoppable when you use it. Upgrade 2 gives us more Fortify because we were lacking a little bit of Fortify without having this. Then Blood Howl, a big heal. Upgrade 1 reduces the cooldown on kill. Upgrade 2 gives us increased attack speed, which is a big reason we're using it. Then we're using Debilitating Roar, reduces all the damage enemies around you will deal. Upgrade 1 fortifies you, and Upgrade 2 gives you increased damage while it's active. And you'll be constantly resetting these, so all 3 of your defensives you're pretty much using on cooldown, maybe besides Earthen Bulwark because this is our only way of becoming unstoppable, so you do want to save this a bit more. Then we're going down 5 points into Wolf's, our main damaging ability. Upgrade 1, Wolf's deal increased damage to CC'd and poison enemies, so just all the time. And then we have Ferocious Wolfpack, a lucky hit. Your wolves have a chance to fortify you when they hit anything. Now you can remove this and go to Brutal Wolf Pack. When you critically strike, your wolves gain increased attack speed, but you don't necessarily need that. And I do think the Fortify is probably just better to make sure you're always fortified. Then 1 point into Ravens, so we can go down and get Brutal Ravens, which gives us just more Ravens in total, which will help scale our companion damage even more. And we're not putting this on our bar either. This is just to have more of the companions for more scaling. Then finally, we're going down 5 points into Petrify. It's just a big AoE stun. Putting 5 points into it resets all of your non-ultimate cooldowns. So we'll be constantly using this to reset all of our abilities. Upgrade 1, when you hit any enemy with this, they take increased critical strike damage. Bosses take even more critical strike damage and the duration is increased. Upgrade 2, when you kill an enemy affected by Petrify, reduces its cooldown. And when you hit a boss, it just reduces its cooldown even more. And then next up, we have our passives. 1 into Predatory Instinct to go down and put 3 into Iron Fur. You gain damage reduction while in Werebear form and 3 seconds after. And our Debilitating Roar puts us in a Werebear and we'll be able to constantly reset this. So that'll just be some damage reduction anytime we get to use this. Then we're going down 3 points into Ancestral Fortitude. Increases your non-physical resistances just to make sure we have capped resistances. I could probably actually remove some points from this, and I probably will once I get my Paragon level up more. And then Vigilance, damage reduction after using a defensive. This will be up majority of the time. Then backlash damage increase after using a defensive, so this will be up a majority of the time as well. 3 points into Humanity, you deal increased damage while in human form, and this is really good because anytime you cast Wolves, it puts you into human form. So anytime you cast your main damaging ability, you just get a damage increase because you're in human form. Then Feral Aptitude, you deal increased damage while healthy and increased damage while above 100% move speed, and these stack. And then Call of the Wild, your companions deal massively increased damage. Then we're going down 1 into Neurotoxin to get 3 into Envenom. You and your companions deal bonus critical strike damage against poison enemies. Everything's always poison, so this is a massive damage scaler. And then we have 3 points in Defiance. Nature skills deal increased damage to elites. 3 points into Catastrophe. You deal increased damage after casting an ultimate, which will be up a lot of the time because we reset our ultimate so much. 1 point into Defensive Posture, just for some additional Fortify and damage reduction while fortified. Then at 3 points into Quick Shift. Shapeshifting into a new animal form gives you a damage increase, stacking up. And this is lost if you're in human form for 3 seconds. If you're in combat, this will never be lost. Then Heightened Senses. When shapeshifting, Werebear grants you damage reduction, Werewolf gives you move speed, and these will stay up as long as you don't stay in human form for 3 seconds, which in combat, these will always stay up. And then finally, our capstone, 1 with Nature. Your companion skills gain 1 additional companion for more scaling and deal massively increased damage, and you gain the passive effect of all of your companion skills. So that means we also get the passive effect for Poison Creeper, which gives us 3 more companions, which will help scale our damage even more. And then we have our Spirit Boons. We have Wariness to take reduced damage from elites. We have Iron Feather for massively increased life. And then we have Avian Wraith for increased critical strike damage. I know some people will use Swooping Strikes for more attack speed, but I like the max life increase. Then we have Pack Leader. A lucky hit. Critical strikes have up to a 66% chance to reset the cooldown of your companion skills. This is increased from our unique legs, and this is the main way we keep resetting our companion skill, which is our main damaging ability. Then Calm Before the Storm, a lucky hit. Nature skills have up to a 10% chance to reduce the cooldown of your ultimate skill, and our wolves now have the nature tag, so they'll just be constantly proccing this to reduce our ultimate cooldown. And then we have our mercenaries, and I'm personally using Variana as my main mercenary that's actually going to be following me around. The primary reason is Hysteria. You gain increased attack speed whenever Variana damages an enemy up to 10%, so 10% attack speed. Then the Bloodthirst ability, which when she uses it, you gain more attack speed. And then Bloodlust, when she uses Bloodthirst, that attack speed is increased even more. So this is just giving us a lot of attack speed. And I haven't done testing yet on if she's going to be better than Subo, because Subo has a passive where when he hits something with one of his abilities, they take 25% increased critical strike damage from you, which is multiplicative, so that could be better, but either one is going to be fine. And then for your reinforcement, I generally just recommend Rahir. Have him use the Bastion ability, which spawn this bubble that will redirect 90% of the damage you would take to him for 5 seconds and grants you unstoppable, and you just apply it to cast when you're injured. So if you get super low, it'll pop up, give you massive damage reduction, make you unstoppable. It can definitely save you some of the time. And then we have our witchcraft powers. For our unique, we're taking Vengeful Spirit Servant. Every 15 seconds you spawn a Vengeful Spirit for 10 seconds. While active, any damage you would take is redirected to it, which is the primary reason we're using this. It is a summon, but that doesn't really scale a ton because most of our scaling is done through companions. But when Vengeful Spirit is fully depleted, it'll also rush to enemies and deal some damage. We're primarily taking it just for that damage reduction. And then for our other witchcraft powers, we're taking Hex of Shattering. Your witchcraft effects that damage enemies will now apply Hex of Shattering, meaning they deal reduced damage for 5 seconds, 20%, which is massive. And then we have Hex of Flames to a 60% chance chance to inflict Hex of Flames as a lucky hit. And when Hex of Flames is applied on an enemy, anytime they're hit, they take additional fire damage. And if it's a crit, it does AoE fire damage. And because our companions are always critting, this will actually deal some decent AoE damage, but this is primarily to tie into one of our occult gems. Then we have the most important power, Grow. After casting your ultimate skill, all of our companions are empowered, dealing massively increased damage at 61% at max rank, but they also gain a 100% crit strike chance for 10 seconds. So that crit strike will be up a majority of the time, and we don't have to worry about scaling crit or getting more crit chance because we have 100% through this. So we pop our ultimate and our companions just go crazy and destroy everything. Then Aura of Siphoning is just an aura around you that deals poison damage to enemies, heals you for 1% of your max life every time it deals damage, and this does apply a poison to enemies, so that will help with other effects, making sure everything's poisoned and healing us a good amount. Then a Soul Harvest, whenever you use a cooldown, you gain a 1% primary core stat per surrounding enemy this lasts 20 seconds. If there are enemies surrounding you, it has infinite duration. So this just scales our willpower, our main core stat, which just increases the damage of all of our abilities, but it also increases the damage of our unique ring, pulling everything in. So this is just really strong. And pretty much the one thing I'm missing with this build is in my witch powers, and it's one of the lost powers, Aura Specialization. So your auras gain a bunch of size with this, which is nice because then our Aura of Siphoning will hit everything more easily. But at rank 10, you deal increased critical strike damage to enemies within your aura. So your aura is massive, everything within it takes more critical strike damage. This is going to be really good. We're going to change this out probably for Hex of Shattering. The damage reduction is nice, but this damage increase is really good. And then that brings us to our Paragon boards. We're primarily going to be going over the board and glyph selection, but if you want to follow point by point, there'll be a build planner in the description. Keep in mind, when you're going through your Paragon boards, you're going to want to make sure you get your resistances and armor capped. You can do a lot of that through your Paragon boards if you need to. But our starting board, we're going with the Keeper glyph, which is a buff to all rare nodes within range, so just a bunch of damage increases. The secondary gives you and your companions increased non-physical damage, which is just basically damage increase, and the legendary is increased non-physical damage. Then the first board we're taking is Heightened Malice. While poison enemy is nearby, you deal massively increased damage. This is increased for more poison enemies nearby up to 4, so this has been buffed specifically on bosses now. And the glyph we're taking is Spirit, just gives you an increase to critical strike damage. The secondary, when you crit something, they take increased damage stacking up, and the legendary gives you more critical strike damage increase. Then we're going over to the left, we're taking the Thunderstruck board. Storm skills deal increased damage equal to 20% of your damage versus close and distant, up to 60%. Ours is capped at 60%. You can actually get a lot of this scaling through a lot of the magic nodes throughout the boards, so just a massive damage increase for our wolves, which are Storm. The glyph we're taking is Earth and Sky, which is a bonus to magic nodes within range, so some stats and some damage increases. The secondary, Nature skills deal increased damage to CC'd and vulnerable enemies. The legendary is increased nature skill damage. Then we're going up, we're taking the Untamed board. Casting a companion skill gives increased companion damage for 5 seconds, stacking up to 80%. This is absolutely massive. Then the glyph we're taking is Wilds, gives you increased companion damage, and the secondary, which is actually the main reason we're taking this, the passive portion of companion skills deal 130% increased damage. So this is really good for your wolves, because your wolves just running around meleeing things is that passive portion. So your wolves just running around meleeing things does a lot more damage with this. And then finally, we're going back down, we're going all the way to the right, and the board we're taking is Lust for Carnage. Critical strikes with werewolf skills restore 2 spirit and deal massively increased damage. This works with your werewolves because of one of our legendary aspects as well, and it restores spirit. And this is one of the reasons we don't need a basic skill anymore, because our wolves are just constantly giving us spirit back, so we can use our shred a lot more without having to generate more spirit. And then the final glyph we're taking is Headhunter, a bonus to normal nodes within range, and then the secondary gives increased damage to elites, and the legendary is just a damage increase. And then finally, that brings us to our gear, starting with our gems, our runes, and our occult gems. And for your runes, you're going to want one of the sets in your weapon and one of the sets in just one of your other armor pieces. And our first set is going to be Yul Se, which is cast a skill on a cooldown. Do this 2 times. It summons a Spirit Wolf companion to attack enemies for 8 seconds. And it's a companion, so it gets all of the scaling from our companions and skills our companions even more. Then our other set is going to be Naga Yam. Maintain 1 active summon for 5 seconds. This will gain you Offering up to 6 minions, and this needs to happen 5 times to cast our Petrify ability. Now this free Petrify doesn't work with everything. Specifically, it doesn't work with resetting your skills. For some reason, the 5 out of 5 rank of Petrify does not work with this rune, which I think it actually should, because it should gain the effect of your upgrades through your skill tree. So I think that's actually just a bug right now. But what this does work with is our unique ring. So anytime this auto casts our Petrify, it will first off refill all of our spirit, which also shows that it does work with our upgrades, just not the 5 out of 5 upgrade. It will also do the special effect of this unique ring. It pulls in everything and it does actually deal the damage, but that damage seems to happen quicker than your normal Petrify when you cast it, but it does just completely proc our unique ring. So that's also pretty nice. And the spirit refill makes sure we can always be shredding. Now you can replace this out with the Yam rune, which casts the Barbarian Shout to give you 15% increased damage, which is multiplicative. That will give you actually more damage, but I like the concept Petrify cast. It obviously gives you spirit, it pulls everything in, but it also keeps stunning everything as well. And then for our other gems, we're just using willpower increases. And then for our occult gems on our jewelry, we're first off using the Bog gem, which while you have 3 or more growth and decay witch powers equipped, you gain 8% primary core stat, 10% max life, and you're unhindered, meaning you can walk through enemies. So this is actually very strong in every section of that. Then we're using the gem that your common growth and decay witch powers are 35% more potent. So that's going to be really strong, especially for something like our grow power. And then finally, your summons deal increased direct damage to hexed elites. Now we have Hex of Flame, which will pretty much always be on something. So that's just massive damage increase against elites, and bosses are considered elites as well. And that brings us to our legendary aspects since we already went over our uniques. Now on a two-handed weapon, we want Shepherds. Companion skills deal an additional up to 26% damage per companion you have. That's multiplicative. This is probably the biggest scaler in this build. Just massive damage increase for our companion skills. And then on our necklace, your wolf companions are now werewolves, and they deal massively increased damage, up to 210% multiplicative damage. They can spread rabies, but we don't care about that. Then for our other offensive aspects, on my ring, I have Moon Rage. Kills have a 5% chance to summon a wolf companion for 35 seconds. This is a normal wolf companion, and it will take all of the other effects. So it's a werewolf, and when using your wolf active ability, it acts like a normal werewolf, and with all the additional scaling, this effect is a lucky hit against bosses. You can have a maximum of 3 wolves, which is massive, and you gain 3 ranks to wolf. And then our final offensive aspect, gain 1 additional companion. In addition, your companion skills deal increased damage, so just much more scaling in general. And then our last legendary aspect is on our boots, and we're going to be using a lucky hit. Damaging an enemy has up to a 20% chance to daze them for 2 seconds. You deal increased damage to daze enemies, and that's multiplicative, so this is just very strong. And it's another CC, which will just really help with stunning those bosses as well. Now, I'm not going to go over all the stats. You'll be able to find all of the best ones in the build planner, but some of the most important is on your weapon, you have a chance for wolves to deal double damage as a tempering. And then in general, for your temperings, you can get 2 different things. You can get wolf's attack speed and werewolf attack speed. Now, how this works is that you have attack speed caps like you have caps of most other stats, and wolf's is a different cap compared to werewolf. So werewolf is a different attack speed cap, so you want to be getting both of them on a lot of your pieces of gear. And then something that's really important is on your ring, you want lucky hit up to a certain chance to make enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. This is how we apply vulnerable. It's just 1 roll on one of our rings, and because we're hitting stuff so much, we have such high lucky hit, we'll just apply vulnerable very quickly. But that's the entirety of my final version of my wolf-focused companion druid build. It is incredibly strong, and this should allow you, once you get up to this gear and get everything upgraded, this should allow you to do level 100 pit runs. And the reason that's important is because you can cap out your glyphs doing 100 pit runs. So that's kind of the goal for me with this build. But that's all I want to go over. So thanks for